Alrighty. Hi, everybody. Thanks for bearing with the tech stuff. I'm Cynthia BrianKate. I've been a green pretty much for my entire political life. Either I was nothing or I've now been green. Let's see. I've been involved in green politics since about 2008, and we're here today to talk about what's the exact title we have for this, Dawn Marie. I know
this is Intersex Part 2, common language for all these terms that are being used.
I thought so, but I wanted to be sure. I've been on so many workshops in the last couple of years. I'm always like, okay, what's the title for this one? I know the subject. What's the title? As the T-shirt I have today, my Intersex is Beautiful shirt says, yeah, intersex will definitely be part of this, though we will also be going to other terms and definitions, which, as the title of the workshop implies, common language so that people know what the heck we're talking about. And so that miscommunications can be kept to a minimum, and so accidentally getting anything out of whack about people will also be to a minimum. I've actually done workshops where I thought people knew all the terms, and halfway in, a good friend asked me, okay, can you all say what any of these words mean? And that's an important lesson. So I'll start from the beginning with this. Intersex is the current, actually it's over 100 years old, but it's the most current term used for people who are biologically in between male and female, and that is whether due to chromosomes, hormones, internal, external genitalia, other physical sex characteristics. This is talking about the reproductive characteristics as opposed to what a person considers themselves. The old word hermaphrodite is not used by most groups or people these days. There are people who are offended by it, though there are some people who still use it. That word was actually used for the first American, at least, big name intersex rights protest, because in 1996, a bunch of activists under the banner of Hermaphrodites with Attitude. I've had one of the original shirts, but I've worn it to so many rallies, protests, and classes like this that it is literally 3 shreds. And that was a protest to shut down the 1996 American Academy of Pediatrics Conference, because at the time, very anti-intersex medical standards were being used by that body to try performing non-consensual surgeries on the physical bodies of unconsenting intersex babies and children. And that generated so much people power that it is considered by many the start of the American intersex rights movement. And this is a major green issue because if you look at our platform, we have stuff on our sexual orientation and gender identity plank, as well as other places that talk about supporting bodily autonomy for all people. And that includes opposing non-consensual, unnecessary surgeries on babies and children's genitalia in order to make them fit arbitrary standards of gender. That brings us to sex as opposed to gender, or at least as a different thing from gender, because sex is biology. It's whether you're male, female, or intersex. I myself happen to be intersex. I was assumed male at birth because I was born in 1976 when people weren't talking much about this in general conversation. Outside of the anime that I watched as a child and the sci-fi I watched as a child, no, this wasn't really as much in the popular conversation as is now, which is why we have this panel today, because this stuff is in the current discourse. So I was assumed to be male, raised as a guy, didn't exactly go as expected, though that's more my gender identity, is that I did not consider myself a boy. I've actually grown up more identifying as a woman than a man. But back to biology, I was told, oh, I would go through a certain puberty, a completely male puberty, that I would not grow breasts because, oh, you're a boy. Boys don't grow those. Actually, it's not that simple. I myself have had 2 puberties, I did grow breasts, answered 1,000 unanswered childhood prayers in my middle 20s. My first girlfriend was more surprised than I was, but she was wonderfully supportive. Uh, and okay, some people assume that intersex refers only to being generally intersex. Well, yeah, as I said, it can refer to hormones, it can refer to chromosomes, genitalia. And I apparently am an intersex chimera. Chimera is when twins, triplets, or other fetuses merge in utero into a single body, and you wind up with a person born with a composite body. If that's identical siblings, then they're all of the same sex. But if you get fraternal siblings, well, if they're of the same sex, it's still going to be somebody of one sex. But if the fraternal siblings are of different sexes, then you wind up with somebody who's intersex because they're a chimera. That would be me. I've actually been exploring a lot of my body over the last 6-7 years. People tell me, oh, but you should know your body. Actually, it's not always that simple, which is why we're here today. So yeah, intersex is being in between male and female. The word itself was coined in 1917. When I did some homework for a panel I was on in 2016 into 2017, I looked it up. I'm like, wow, it's older word than we thought. Intersex is different from transgender. I happen to also be transgender because, okay, a dear friend asked me once, so how can you be trans if you're intersex? The flippant answer is I was raised a boy and grew up a woman, but the technical answer is biological sex and gender identity are two different things. One refers to reproduction, the other refers to your internal sense of yourself as a man, a woman, non-binary, gender non-conforming, agender, which are people who don't really feel they have a definable gender. So yeah, gender is the categories of everything of being for boys, girls, or everyone. And that also refers to, yeah, gender identity, as I said, is your sense of yourself. Non-binary are people who do not identify with the definitions of man or woman. And this goes to preferred pronouns. I recommend, as do many activists, that you ask somebody, especially if you have no idea, what pronouns that y'all want to be called. And it's not just he or she. The singular they is used by many non-binary or NB people, including several dear friends of mine. And there are other pronouns. If you Google them, you can find a whole bunch of them. A lot of them sound like C instead of she or he, or Z. A lot of them instead of him or her, or like he or HIR, which anyone thinks that this is all newfangled words that nobody came up with till now. That pronoun is in Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, which was sometime in the 14th century. I should know the date because I have a degree in literature, but at any rate, medieval times, literally medieval, going medieval with the pronoun. It has an extra E because most things in Middle English have that ye olde extra E. But point is, you have non-binary pronouns being used as far back as that. Anyone who says that all this stuff is new, no, it's simply that there are new discussions, new conversations. People are newly talking about it. The reason we have the old word hermaphrodite for intersex people is because the ancient Greeks actually believed in in-between deities, who were born of the gods to be in between. I've done workshops for various parts of this party about the cross-cultural and world mythology aspects of that. Gender non-conforming are people who, regardless of what their gender identity is, do not go along with all the expectations, stereotypes, behaviors, roles, any of that. And that can include cisgender people. Cis and trans are chemistry terms. Cis means same as, at least that's what I remember from high school and a little college chemistry. Trans means basically having moved, having changed, being somehow different. So transgender is an umbrella term for people who are somehow not the gender that they were expected to be or raised as. And that's whether they identify as the opposite of that or whether they identify as somewhere else. And an intersex person can be of any gender identity or expression. Identity is what you consider yourself. Expression is how you show to the world through clothing, hair, makeup if you wear it, jewelry if you wear it, other stuff that you do. I often prefer dresses and skirts. It's 92 degrees in my neighborhood. I was outside with my cousin today, and I decided, if I could get away with going butt naked, no, I'm on a panel, so I got to throw on some basic summer shorts. But yes, that's expression. And an intersex person can be of any gender expression. The word intergender is often used for people who are biologically intersex but are somewhere on the transgender umbrella. A bizarre, pun intended, half and half compromise between the trans of transgender and the inter of intersex. So let's see. Oh, sexual orientation is different from gender identity and biological sex. Sexual orientation involves sexual attraction. There's also romantic orientation, because sex and romance are two different things. Romance is all, the stuff with dating and the kissing and making out and all the stuff that you do that feels romantic. Sex is, sex. I happen to be on the asexual spectrum, which means I do not experience sexual attraction the way that the mainstream population is expected to. And that's its own spectrum, which can range from people who have no sexual attraction at all to other people, completely asexual and or aromantic, who have no romantic attraction to other people, to people who are romantic but asexual, people who are demisexual, able only to be sexually attracted. There's also demi-romantic, to people who they have a strong, positive, loving, emotional connection with. There's also lithosexual, people who, I'll say the give is the better to receive, in that case, in the bedroom. They will do stuff for other people that way, but don't so much want it for them. There's also agosexual, who are not attracted to other people in real time, but definitely enjoy stories, videos, audio, and such. Because this is the thing. Sexual orientation involves A, are you attracted to other people sexually? B, what kind of genders are you attracted to? And C is also the power dynamic. I happen to be on the BDSM, bondage, discipline, sadism, masochism, dominant submission spectrum as people of any sexual orientation, biological sex, or gender identity may be. So my experience is that sex and romance involve, are you attracted to other people? What kind of power dynamics do you want in that? Who has the power? Who gives the power? Who receives the power? And again, what gender or genders are you attracted to? And that includes polyamorous people. Not everybody is just interested in one person at a time. And these are all terms that relate to sexuality, to gender. And I know it's a whole info dump and it's a whole, okay, there are all these terms. Well, that's the thing, there are all these people. There is a whole range of sexuality, romantic attraction, gender identity, sexual orientation, and biological sex. And the human rights issues are the fact that people have had to fight for the right to be themselves. It's been about how many years since 1969, the Stonewall Rebellion. Until Stonewall, you could be arrested for breaking 3 articles of law. If you didn't have at least 3 articles of clothing that fit the gender you were expected at birth, they could arrest you, let alone being lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. That's some of the history. On intersex, we are still fighting in many places for the right of basically people to not be sterilized when they are born or in their childhood because of medical protocols that are finally being overturned in many places that were dictating that you were pretty much, if intersex and noticed as such at birth, subjected to hideous non-consensual surgeries on genitals. And that has caused a lot of harm. That's caused a lot of harm to people's reproduction, bodily autonomy, all the emotional stuff that comes with not being able to reproduce because somebody did something like that to you when you were a child. And that, as I said before, was the impetus for the American intersex rights movement, as well as that rights movement in many other countries. I am proud that in the past 2 years, I've been doing workshops on this for you all. Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago was sadly doing such horrible surgeries. A.J. Reed spoke about this on a panel with myself and Margaret Elizabeth. And in the last 2 years, due to activism by people like Pigeon Pagones, who made my Intersex is Beautiful t-shirt I'm wearing, that hospital has stopped doing such things, has started making amends, and that's been a major human rights issue. Several countries have passed human rights laws across the board to stop what is called IGM, intersex genital mutilation rather. Intersex genital mutilation is the term that many intersex activists use for such hideous surgeries. And Greece, from what I was told by friends on Facebook 2 days ago, has passed human rights laws to stop such horrible procedures and affirm the full human rights under the law of intersex people. Malta was the first full country. I think Chile was one of the next, and I think now it's up to 5 countries. I want America to be the next. We should have been the first. I want us to be the next. And our platform as the Green Party says that, yes, we should be. Dawn Marie, am I covering enough? I hope. There's so much to cover.
Absolutely. We're at 5:53. So did you want to open it up for any questions, or did you want to go ahead and talk about definitions a bit more?
Maybe a little bit more in definitions for a couple minutes. I've given most of the definitions. Is there anything I really haven't covered that you're wanting to hiss at me under the table? Why haven't you done this?
How common is intersex?
Oh, right, frequency. There have been many statistics. The cutesy statistic that people say is the as common as redheads. I'm actually Auburn myself, but no, that's a lowball statistic. That would be only 1 in 100. According to Robin Wood's research, which I'm a friend of hers, that's 20 years old research. It was something like 7 to 10% of the population. I was in a support group about 6 weeks ago, and since this is not identifying anybody who was there, I was told, and I've looked this up through various sources, it's now up to nearly 12% of the general population if you lump in genital, hormonal, chromosomal, any other type of intersex. There are about 40 to 50 different medically recognized, and that does not include those not recognized by the medical establishment, physical things that fall under intersex that are types of people. The word conditions used, I'm not always the happiest with that word, but yes, the medical establishment recognizes about 48 or so different types of intersex people. And in terms of chimerism, you and I, Dawn Marie, I believe are both still good acquaintances with Carol Dennis, who's a researcher on vanishing twin syndrome. That's where basically somebody is
1 in
pregnant
8
with,
pregnancies. Yes, that is
yes,
a 1 in 8 pregnancies starts out as twins. And of those 1 in 8, only half go on to have children who are twins. There is 4 or 5 of those that are potential chimeras or vanishing twin syndrome.
yeah, because 1 of 3 things can happen with this. Siblings are lost in miscarriage, which is quite sad, obviously. One of the siblings or more may be reabsorbed into the pregnant person carrying them, which then changes their DNA because they now have their fetus's DNA mixed in with theirs, which is called microchimerism. And the third option, which happened with me, is all siblings in there merge to get off at the final destination. So this is far more common than people think. I tell people, when you're in that grocery line with 10 items or less, one out of those other 10 people online with you with their 10 items or less may be intersex, for all you know. So among 10 items or less is take your conception that none of these people might be intersex and chuck that back in the frozen food aisle. And yeah, human rights issues. We've mentioned the bodily autonomy of people. We've mentioned the need for that to be respected by all medical practitioners. And that includes the right of a pregnant person to carry a fetus that is recognized through ultrasound or other scanners as intersex or chimera or both. This also includes the reproductive rights, not only of the pregnant people, but of the babies and children who are born to enjoy full reproductive potential without being robbed of that by non-consensual surgeries. And sadly, the current political landscape is that a whole bunch of states, I'd have to look up the map and then I'd probably smack the computer device giving me the map, but there are too many states where right-wing legislators are trying to pass legislation which is designed to target transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming young people, but it also hits intersex people, denying young people the right to gender-affirming medical care, including the right to hormone blockers and other such medical care, also hurts intersex children and youth if they happen to know themselves to be a gender other than the one they were assumed at birth. So this is a major human rights issue that is pretty hot in this country right now, and the Green Party believes that all these young people need protection. I certainly do, and I'm glad that I'm in a political party that agrees with me. So I guess we should open the questions now, Donna Marie?
You can put questions in the chat, or if you hold your hand up, I can unmute you.
Good, because I happen to be legally blind, which is why my eye contact's all over the map, so I can't see that chat thing. My iPhone would talk over y'all, so I'll let, please don't really take any questions.
I don't see any questions yet. A question that I would have would be, what do you think can be done to help advocate for those that are too young to talk for themselves yet?
I would say, at the very least, first of all, the providing of up-to-date, accurate information, literature, awareness among medical practitioners, among parents groups, among advocacy groups. PFLAG, what's the acronym? Something like parents. Is it Parents, Friends, and Families of Lesbian and Gay People? Though they do include intersex. I actually helped them work on their intersex glossary entries over the last 4 years. Have made it clear that they want to help parents be more understanding. Simply telling medical practitioners, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, fixing something like a urinary blockage, the inability to pee or poo, that will kill you. Not fitting, stereotypical gender or biological sex assumptions is just fine. It's diversity. It's part of human biodiversity. We've had people like me as long as there have been people on this planet. And so, yeah, first of all, telling doctors, don't cut into kids' parts just because y'all think they're non-standard. Healthy tissue should not be cut into. Surgery should only be performed to save lives at that age. The founder of Organization Intersex International, of which I'm one of the New York area board members, Curtis E. Hinkle, talks about both having a type of intersex called congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which actually kind of affects chromosomes, hormones, and genitals in some ways, and of having been born with a urinary blockage. He is fine with the fact they fixed something that was going to kill him. He's not fine with the fact that they claimed they were fixing something that wasn't broken. So yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Logic for doctors and all other medical practitioners.
Amy has a question. Amy?
Excuse me.
I placed it in the chat just in case we had an issue.
This is the tech person too. I saw Amy's question, but also Maya Jaggard has also got their hand raised.
Well, please go, people.
Oh, okay, should I just read it?
Well, whatever way I can hear it, because unfortunately I do not have the ability to chat.
Oh, sure. Well, I'll just read it. I was wondering if there's been progress made for folks like you in the party itself, in the Green Party itself, because that awfulness with Georgia and the subsequent disaccreditation, I think, was only about a year ago, if I'm remembering correctly.
It was. I will say this right now, the simple fact that the Georgia Green Party was disaccredited, I think is a major stride. It should not have had to have been. Georgia's leaders were given every ample opportunity, because I tried dialoguing with both sides on this to see what was going on, and I can say that the Georgia Green Party leaders of that incarnation of the Georgia Green Party were given a couple years practically to listen to those of us who were saying it's not right to discriminate against transgender, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming people. And those leaders doubled, trebled, and tupled down on it, and they got kicked out. And they had no fault but their own to blame for that. And I will say, I am proud that this party did the right thing. I still wish it hadn't had to come to that, but that alone is a major stride. But also, this party was already very good on these issues, which is why the Georgia thing was so shocking. Most of the chapters of this party I've encountered have been very good on this. At worst, most of the others just haven't heard of this. I am actually a vice chair of the Green Party of Suffolk, as in Suffolk County on Long Island, where I'm kind of sitting right now on a messy bed. And Green Party of Suffolk has been doing advocacy on transgender, intersex, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and related issues for pretty much before I even came into the party. I say the fact that we're able to have this conversation, and that this is something like the third time I've been able to speak on a panel like this nationally for the Green Party, shows that we're doing pretty good. I would like to see some more education. I would like to see more events like this. I'd like to see more things done for Intersex Solidarity Day throughout the party. But I think there's a lot good we can build on. By the way, it wasn't that the definitions, but it's part of the history. There were 2 dates. Intersex Awareness Day, October 26th. That's the anniversary of the Hermaphrodites with Attitude protest I mentioned, where the activists shut down the American Academy of Pediatrics conference. And November 8th, that is Intersex Solidarity Day, because people like Curtis Hinkle, who I mentioned, said awareness is not enough. We need solidarity. Intersex people standing together to challenge anything that needs to be challenged, and our friends and allies and supporters standing with us. And that date was picked for some sad history. Herculine Barbin, B-A-R-B-I-N, was a 19th century intersex person who was outed against her wishes, heck, without even her knowledge that she was intersex. Not every intersex person is noticed at birth. She was eventually noticed by doctors and was dragged out into the public eye by the medical and legal establishment of the 19th century. She had a very short and sad life, and activists decided, let's use her story coming out into the public, her diary being translated by Michel Foucault in the 80s, many intersex activists have decided, okay, fine, we're going to use this day as an in your face taking back of the history of stories like hers. And the Green Party has had a couple events nationally on November 8th. I've spoken on them. I think this should be across the board. I think this conversation shouldn't just be had today for an hour and a half. This conversation needs to be ongoing throughout the party, the same way it needs to be ongoing throughout everywhere.
I'm going to.
I hope that answers it.
I'm sorry, this is the room tech. I'm sorry to butt in, but there was another person with a call. So just wanted to let you know, Maya Jagard had their hand up. So sorry to butt in, but I just wanted to note that.
No
so
problem.
That's in the pipeline there.
So that, I hope that answers the one question. What was the other question, please?
Hi, my name's Maya. You mentioned Chile and what was the other one? Greece that
And Malta.
recognized, and Malta that like recognized youth intersex rights. They have a law on the books there that the United States does not, other than the intersex laws. They have what's called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is a 1989 treaty ratified by 196 member states. So obviously, not everybody has ratified the treaty except for the United States. It's been shot down by every president that has been able to have the chance to present it since Bush 1, because it was opened up for signatures in 1990. Clinton signed it in 95, but nothing's happened since. And this establishes that children, to an extent, have bodily autonomy and have a right to speak up in medical practices to their bodies. Most countries have it around 10 to 12 years old. And before that, obviously, they're considered too young and it's entrusted to their parents. But doctors are are held much more liable for not consulting parents on this. So I think definitely it's not the only bill that we need to sort out. We also need to do the intersex bill. But I think that our legislators should be considering the UNCRC as part of, if we're going to solve this issue, because it gives a child a right to privacy and it gives a child a right to bodily autonomy.
Oh yeah, because this is the thing. The United Nations has, among other things, declared intersex genital mutilation a declared form of straight up torture. I'd have to do a quick look through my info files on what date that was, but I can say that I was asked to speak on that particular aspect of things in July of 2020. The UN actually funded a women's project called Women Included. There's a book of essays. I have an essay in the latter part of the book, and they actually had everyone who wrote an essay to speak on some of these topics, with a lady from the UN translating what we said into French as we spoke. And part of what I wrote and was asked to speak on is that the UN has declared violence against people based on gender to be in violation of all sorts of rules and things, and that that intersex people, including intersex children, have rights to bodily autonomy, that they are not to be tortured, which includes by medical procedures, which are called by us activists as intersex genital mutilation. And I do think, though, that this country does, in fact, need a law that gives full recognition and respect under the law to intersex people. As I said, Greece now, Malta back way in the day, Chile, and there's, I think, 2 other countries that I'd have to do a couple lookups on, because I only became aware of that there were 5 yesterday. Because this is the thing, we have some states, we have some localities, we have some municipalities who are working on this, but we need legislation to say that intersex people have the right to bodily autonomy, the right to full rights under the law. so long as it stands in the Supreme Court, I do believe that Bostock v. Clayton does say you can't be fired from your job over gender identity or expression. I hope that still stands. So with the current court, who the heck knows what's going to happen 5 minutes from now? And that's the thing. We need laws to make sure it's not just at the pleasure of the courts. The same way that people, I think, should have an actual law to say whatever your sexual orientation is, acts between consenting adults in privacy should not be targeted by law enforcement. Lawrence versus Texas ensured that in 2003. But again, most people here that I talk to are scared as heck as to what the Supreme Court will do at any point. Same thing with on marriage equality. Obergefell versus Hodges was 2015, because in some states, intersex people weren't being given the right to marry because, well, you're not considered a man on paper, you're not considered a woman on paper, and there's been historical instances with that in places like the Olympics. The Olympics have had draconian policies saying that if this is almost exclusively been used on people considered women athletes, that if the testosterone level is above a certain arbitrary standard, they will try enforcing medical procedures on those athletes to make them fit arbitrary standards. Caster Semenya is a runner from South Africa. I don't know what the status of her eligibility to be an athlete is under that. And in the Cold War, I met sports and feminism commentator C.L. Cole, who actually quoted from a, I think, Eisenhower era document that said, quote, them godless commies are going to sneak super hermaphrodites into our Christian women's sports, which shows the religious bias, which shows the gender bias, which shows the interphobia is one word used for anti-intersex bias. Quick ironic anecdote on that. The entire East German women's swim team were disqualified from the 1960 or 64 or 68, I have to look up which Olympics. They were told they weren't, quote, real women, unquote, because they did not have simply XX or XY chromosomes. Funny thing is, for their so-called not being women, they fulfilled every stereotypic role of getting pregnant and giving birth soon after that rejection by the Olympics. As for chromosomes, people are told that everybody who's male has XY chromosomes, everyone who's female has XX. Not quite. I could sit down with a tic-tac-toe grid and come up with every variation, including you can even have an X and nothing else called X0. I think that might be what's called Turner syndrome. Both Casimir Pulaski and George Washington, two heroes of the American Revolution, have been revealed by medical science to be chromosomally intersex. With Washington, they're still debating whether he was XXY or XYY, depending on which geneticists are looking at his what's left of his genome after, nearly 300 years? You can just Google the recent articles on Pulaski where they're coming up with the same findings. So none of this stuff is as simple as people think. Hormones, the pop culture and stereotypes are that men have only testosterone and women only have estrogen. Besides the stereotype that men are male, women are female. That shows the gender bias is inherent in still so much of pop culture and the rest of culture that are changing, I'd say, exponentially with people coming out and being themselves. But the idea that male is only testosterone, female is only estrogen, no. Everybody who produces sex hormones, some intersex people do not produce either, including an acquaintance of mine I'll probably hear from tonight. Everybody who produces sex hormones has some balance of estrogen and testosterone. I simply do not have the one that was assumed of me at birth. So do we got any other questions? I felt I should throw some of this stuff out there. Anyone doing, Marie?
Does anyone else have any questions they want to put into the waiting room? Or if you can hold your hand up, I can unmute.
I'm looking too. I don't see anyone in the waiting room. There shouldn't be.
I'll welcome any questions if people got them, if it's in my power to say anything on it. I can speak for what I've learned on the subject. I can speak to my own experience. I can speak to that of some people, some of whom are slightly famous, who've said, yeah, tell their stories. I mean, there's still some human rights issues that people don't necessarily know about. Hida Valoria is the head of Intersex Campaign for Equality. Their websites, our website actually, because I'm a board member, is intersexequality.com. The acronym is IC4E, considering that the head and founder is of Latinx ethnicity. They didn't want it to be confused with something titled ICE. Hida has published a memoir called Born Both and an essay that exposes Obama-era use, and since then, same use of body scanners at airports to deny intersex people the right to fly simply for having reproductive biology that does not fit stereotypes. You can Google the essay under fear of flying and in parentheses under the TSA. These are also human rights issues the Green Party, according to our platform, pillars, values. We want this stuff made better. We want people to have full, across the board, human rights to be themselves, to express their gender, to show their lives, to enjoy everything of their biology and identity.
This is the room host again. I see that Margaret Elizabeth is who's one of the National Committee co-chairs, steering committee, and also I think co-chair of the Lavender Caucus, and had some comments. I don't know if anyone has a chance to read them or would like to read them out loud, or read them. Or
please read them now. I would love to hear.
Do you want to have Margaret Elizabeth on mute, or is it okay if I or Dawn read them?
However y'all want to do this. So I can hear the question. Is all I care.
I'm going to ask Margaret Elizabeth to unmute. And okay, whoops. Okay, unmute. Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Hey, Cynthia BrianKate, how are you doing today? Thank you for this workshop.
Hello. And I'm very
so
glad to have one of the co-chairs of the Green Party National Lavender, Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer, Intersex, Asexual, and plus symbol for everyone else caucus, of which I'm a proud member, here to be on the Q&A.
I'm glad I could be here. I'm sorry I wasn't here right at the beginning. I actually thought these started at 3 o'clock instead of when they did. So I'm glad
well, you're here, so we're good.
So I had two comments that I made in the chat. The first was commenting on that. I am grateful to be able to help coordinate the National Lavender Green Caucus in raising the awareness of the amazing intersection of people that we have in our caucus. As you just elaborated on our acronym string, it's good to have it all listed out because we want to be as inclusive as we possibly can. And our plus symbol is, lets us consider all the other gender and sexual and romantic minorities that we may not have included in our initial acronym list. And the second thing that I wanted to say, because this was on the comment when you were talking about how human bodies produce a mix of hormones. So interestingly enough, adrenal glands themselves, whoever has adrenal glands, so basically everybody, though they will produce testosterone. So every human body basically makes testosterone. And interestingly, in a very probably way people didn't think, testes produce testosterone, as we all know, but they also produce estrogen, which I think most people didn't know. And so it's clearly the case that human bodies are an actual balance between two hormones in some configuration. And that balance is what gives rise to the external secondary sex characteristics that we display. And if you shift this hormonal balance in any particular manner, up, down, left, right, however you want to think about that, it changes the external manifestation of the human body. But it's all this wonderful spectrum of things. Anyway, I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad you've had a chance to speak on this issue several
Yeah.
A&Ms in a row now, because, you know, these...
My third, I think.
Indeed, I
Two of
think so,
them
right?
here. Actually, you've been either on or at all three.
Yes, I have. I think these issues are important to me because I represent a fair intersection of our caucus, but there's a lot of stuff I don't know and I need to still be educated on, and it's always good to continue to do that, in my opinion. So there you go. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much. In terms of gonads, yeah, also, in addition to ovaries and testes, there are also ovotestes, which is a combination gonad that some people have that happens to be of both. In addition to testes also producing estrogen, you also have this. In terms of hormonal responses to in terms of the body's response to the hormones, rather, there's at least one type of intersex. The medical term is 5-alpha reductase deficiency. In certain Latinx cultures, I've heard it referred to as hueva doce, eggs at 12, because in Latin culture, you don't call them your balls, you call them your eggs, my Latin friends tell me. And this refers to people who are assumed female at birth, are raised in traditional girl-type gender rearing, and at puberty wind up having a more divergent puberty that in many, the body is seen as more male. You have basically more male genital structures appearing. Now, one of the stereotypes is that all these people are either male identified or non-binary. Not all. I'm friends with Sophia Seidelberg, who happens to be a geneticist in the UK, who has 5-alpha reductase and lives as a very femme lady, uses those words for herself, and has written an article which was designed to be a rebuttal to some very eugenicist junk science articles. There was a guy who actually is known as Eric Villain, I'm not kidding, that's his name with one L, who wrote an article trying to say that there's one gene that makes everybody intersex and he was going to find it and, air quotes, cure it. You know, this is chilling enough in the X-Men universe as a comic book nerd, but in real life it's twice much. Sophia Seidelberg wrote the article, The Gender, Genital, Gene, Genie, all of which have G's. She's a Bowie fan like me. To refute that, as a molecular geneticist, she's pointed out that no trait, including having blue or brown eyes, is necessarily resultant from just a single gene, that genes interact with each other, that obviously there are many types of intersex. They cannot all be from a single gene, any more than necessarily one particular type of intersex may be from the same set of genes, because sometimes genes interact differently. And she also points out the idea that wanting to cure people of what they just are is plain hate and not scientific, which is one of the things that I think we are all in agreement with, that science should be used to help people, not to try to get rid of them or change them without their permission. Though there have been some hideous eugenics projects that have tried doing this. The U.S. government and anti-gay, ex-gay so-called people who claimed you could change someone's sexuality. Actually, Freud debunked that in 1925, and it's been proven over and over such things can't be done. But the federal government got into cahoots with some rogue scientists to create the Feminine Boy Project from 1972 to 86 to brainwash children to not act gay, or when being gay was taken out of the DSM to not act trans.
Who did?
This was called the Feminine Boy Project. And
hang on a moment. I just want to make sure I'm.
Yeah, there was a chime.
I'm sorry, it was my fault. I'm phone. I'll be off. I'm muting my.
No problem. But yes, okay. The Feminine Boy Project was the result of a colleague of John Money. John Money claimed that you could change a child's gender by performing early surgery, and hormones and brainwashing a child to fit that gender. Actually, the test subject, David Reimer, was a young boy whose penis was damaged in a botched circumcision. His very brave and sad life proved that, no, you can't change someone's gender against their will. He rebelled against being raised as a girl, went back to being male, helped co-write the book As Nature Made Him, the true story of the boy raised as a girl. But sadly, he and his twin brother, Brian, committed suicide in 2004. And one of Money's colleagues, A. Richard Green, got into cahoots with a George Rakers, who's been lampooned on Stephen Colbert for being a so-called ex-gay therapist who was then caught, of all things, in basically with a male sex worker. And I am completely fine with affirming the consensual sex workers who are not engaged in criminal trafficking. But in this case, it was more the idea of, okay, these people who say, oh, we can change people from being gay. Yeah, but you're with guys. The Femme Boy Project officially ended in '86, but there are people, including a co-hostess on a radio show that I'm part of, on In Goth We Trust. The main hostess actually came forward and said she'd been subjected to similar things in her childhood. And unfortunately, there have been hormonal experiments done that tried dosing pregnant people carrying fetuses with congenital adrenal hyperplasia to try making them high femme Stepford people. And luckily, this has been debunked, but there are still people trying this. So we have to be, the thing of eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. It's also the price of life, as well as the pursuit of happiness. So I'm not going to just say there's bad stuff out there and we should feel bad about it. I'm saying we should criticize the bad stuff. We should thank the good. We should thank that the Green Party is perfectly up and willing to affirm people's personhood, dignity, rights, and such. And we should oppose any attempt to mess with it, whether it's by doctors, lawyers, politicians, anybody. And this goes back to advocacy. Even as simple as saying that ain't cool when somebody says something interphobic is a big step. We got any other questions? Comments?
I was able to put into the chat the article on the gender Genie, and I also found the Feminine Boy Project article that you wrote, Cynthia. Was there any other links or information you wanted me to put in the chat for people?
Well, you can throw my email, but also, as I said, intersexequality.com is the Intersex Campaign for Equality. And I don't have the link in front of me, but I'm one of the board members of Intersex Friends and Families, IFS. We got a Facebook group, which is for friends, families, lovers, spouses, and supporters of intersex people, as well as intersex people. But it was founded by an intersex person and their wife, a transgender woman who is a late friend of mine, who asked, what about the wives? What about the kids? What about the spouses and other people? So IFF was created for this. I certainly recommend people sit down with the Green Party National Platform and look through the sexual orientation, gender identity plank, and you'll see the language about affirming bodily autonomy and the rights and dignity of intersex people, as well as supporting non-binary and other options on paperwork. We're starting to have paperwork that can actually reflect things on birth certificates, passports, licenses, and other such things. But even that work is still ongoing. So I can sum everything up to say that, yeah, this is stuff the Green Party cares deeply about, and I am very damn proud that the Green Party cares enough about this to have me on these kind of panels to ask about this stuff. I just want to see the conversation going on everywhere there are Greens as well as everywhere there are people. So I just want to see that keep going. So do we have anything else in the time we got left? I'm glad that the money protocols to mutilate intersex children are being overturned across the country. I'm glad that the brave intersex activists who made the shirt I'm wearing right now actually did enough protests to get Lori Hospital of, I think it's Chicago. If AJ Reed were here, they could say more detail on that. But I'm proud that Pigeon and all the other activists got that place to stop doing such hideous surgeries based on the word of a now dead guy whose work has been debunked and discredited, including people like my friend Sophia Seidelberg have discredited all the old stereotypes. And I will say that gender identity, biological sex, sexual orientation, romantic attraction, all this stuff is a beautifully complicated tapestry. And my last quote on this comes from Jurassic Park, where Dr. Ian Malcolm, played by Jeff Goldblum, says of dinosaurs evolving, life always finds a way. So whatever stereotypes people have, sorry, life finds a way. And we should respect the ways that life finds. Anyone got anything else? I figure what time we have left, the whole speak now, forever hold your peace, at least till next time you can get my butt on a panel or can hit me up on email or Facebook.
We've got another question in the chat. We have a large enough support for a wide range of candidates that we can elect a non-traditional person and run such candidates open if they so wish. So this would be in regards to non-binary and how we can run a candidate who just chooses not to be categorized as male or female.
So what is the question?
How do you feel that should be?
I feel that the general population is being more open to non-binary, as well as intersex, as well as transgender, as well as gender non-conforming people. There are candidates running across the country in all sorts of races. I haven't had the time to look up what all the races are or everyone who's running, but I can say the fact that non-binary people are coming out everywhere, as well as intersex people, trans and non-conforming, are coming out everywhere. I think that with the support that a candidate needs to get, I can definitely see candidates running who are intersex and or non-binary, because the two are not the same thing, but people are sometimes both. Okay, I'll say this. I think we are the party that should be running these people. As I said on the disability panel yesterday, I feel that the Green Party should be reaching out to many demographics that don't know we're out there if they don't already do. And if they do, make darn sure that they know that we are the party that supports them. I think that the gender communities, as well as the intersex community, need to know that the Green Party supports all of them and is willing to not only have people of all these spectrums in the party, but I think that we should be putting some campaigns together for good, qualified people to run. And I want to see some intersex, some non-binary, some trans, some non-conforming people among those races. The corporate parties do not seem to care as much about this. I live in New York, where for 17 years, both the Democrats and Republicans were bipartisanly opposing rights to gender identity and expression, while the Green Party, both in New York State and my local in particular, were fighting to get these rights passed. So I say, instead of letting people think, oh, the corporate parties are the answer, tell them they're not the answer. They don't have your rights at heart. The Green Party does. Come over here as long as you have the other values about the environment and nonviolence and social justice. You know, our four pillars: social and economic justice, ecological wisdom, grassroots democracy, peace and nonviolence are 10 key values. All that, as long as the candidates are in keeping with that, I say we run them. And then we show up the corporate parties who are like, but, yeah, well, we got somebody who's non-binary running. You can't top that. At least that's how I'm thinking on this. Also, okay, in this other race, we got someone who's intersex running. See if y'all can match that. Oh, wait, you need to be a party that actually affirms us. I wish that all the parties did, but at this moment, I am proud to be in a party that does. Anything else in the chat?
There is something, I'll just jump in, sorry, but let's see. Amy, the hospital, Ann and Robert Lurie Hospital in Chicago. Douglas Larry wrote, in municipal elections where candidates are more likely known for their work than gender, good candidates can be found, run and win. Douglas is running for office in
I think that's a good place to start, is local things, everything from school and library boards to city councils, chambers of commerce, and things like that. Actually, in Suffolk County, one of our Greens, Marissa Pisa, spelled like pizza, is a gender non-conforming, across the board, diversity activist who's my fellow vice chair of Green Party of Suffolk. Marissa also happens to be the go-to person for the entire county, a civic association, a chamber of commerce, any of those things. The corporate politicians know that if they don't play nice with the punk rock looking person with the blue mohawk and the 6-inch nails, they're not getting their stuff approved. So there are, I would love to see a good green, preferably, I want to see a good green who's any of these demographics run for president at some point. But for right now, I would be darn happy to see if we could get people across the board at every level we can.
This is Holly, the tech person, butting in again. We're about a 10-minute, actually 12-minute time, just to give you an idea.
Is that what that chirp thing is?
That was my getting a message alert. It doesn't matter.
Okay, I don't
Yes.
understand.
Yeah, no, it's not yours, sis. Don't worry about it. Yes, I'm trying to mute myself.
Okay, so but do we have a question, a comment, or something?
Let's see, let me message. Doug Larry says a third of their candidates were non-traditional in some way in 2021. They all want a seat. Half of the rest were also elected. The point is, with time and work, people will elect qualified candidates. I don't know if you want to, if Doug has comments, if you want to unmute him or not, but anyway, just that was the last comment here that I have.
Okay, well, I think that fits what we were saying before, is that, yeah, the Green Party is, as I will say, the party that best represents non-traditional people. And maybe the corporate parties will get tired of eating our dust on affirming social justice and human diversity and start affirming it themselves. But either way, we are still the party that I like best, that I'm proud to have never been anything but, and which I joined this party for 3 reasons. 1, I wanted a party that wasn't blue or red. 2, I live next to a former nuclear disaster site, Brookhaven National Labs, and we don't trust the water out here, which is why you keep seeing me chug out of a bottle in the middle of this so I stay hydrated. The 3rd was, wait a second, there's a political party that actually affirms my gender identity, my sexual orientation, my romantic attraction, in my case, as an asexual spectrum person, my lack of standard attraction, and my biological diversity as an intersex person. Sign me up, and here I am, 13, nearly 14 years later, as a vice chair of a local party. So I welcome anyone else that has anything to say in the time we have.
Amy writes, any interest in talking about athletics and this ongoing hounding of trans and intersex athletes?
Well, I mentioned the politics of the Olympics, which a lot of intersex and transgender activists are quite unhappy with. Caster Semenya was not outed by the IOC, International Olympics Committee. She was outed by the International Association of Athletics Federations. And that was all appearance-based profiling. It wasn't a medical result. She was told, oh, you look too butch, you're too muscular, you look too much like a guy. Let's see, muscular. I don't know, an athlete, why the hell would an athlete ever be muscular? And she was put through some pretty invasive medical testing and was surprised herself to find out she's intersex. And she's had to fight for her right to compete ever since. And we see how many states and localities have had hideously draconian bills tried to be passed, trying to kick anyone who isn't cisgender. Cisgender, by the way, if I wasn't clear before, cisgender is that your gender identity matches what you were expected to be at birth. Transgender, somehow that you didn't. But yes, these states should not be passing bills to limit the access of people who are transgender, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming from competing in sports. I mean, one of the most messed up things was that, was it representative as in Congress? I think Gabbard wasn't one of their parting shots, a bill that thankfully failed that would have been a national bill to kick trans youth out of sports. I'm glad that failed as a bill. So I think we need certainly a bill to protect the right of trans, intersex, non-binary, and non-conforming youth across the board on everything. I think that the right wing is trying to attack several parts of people's right to exist. For everyone who's not cisgender, for everyone who's not heterosexual, everyone who's not traditional, everyone who has a body that is not traditionally 100% male or 100% female, they're going after all of us who don't fit their stereotypes. And the areas they're attacking include the right to compete in sports, for particularly kids and teens who want to do sports, the right to express yourself, the right to medical care that affirms who you are instead of saying what some doctor who might not know better about any of the stuff and certainly isn't you or your family, include, you know more about your body than some politician, some lawyer, some doctor. No, I am not medically documented as being intersex, other than a air quotes hormone anomaly, which is on my paperwork. No, my doctors foolishly think I'm not intersex. So the right wing is going after the rights of, as I said, athletics access, gender affirming care access, the right to express yourself, the right to be open about yourself before you are considered an adult. And also, in some states, I hope we don't have any backroom bills at this point, but there's been a lot of anti-trans and in the same way anti-intersex backroom bills that they've tried passing. HB 2 in North Carolina, I'm grateful that that bill is no longer there, because that basically said that you had to use whatever biological sex was considered on your birth certificate to use the bathroom. My friend Marissa and I are huge fans of punk artist Laura Jane Grace, who's a trans woman punk star. Laura Jane Grace, instead of boycotting North Carolina during that, drove there on purpose and gave a concert where the pyrotechnics were her saying, "You demand my birth certificate to let me pee in a public building?" Pull out his bonfire as she burned her paperwork. I hope we don't have to have more of such amazing theatrics, but I admire that she did that. And yeah, all these areas are areas that we as the Green Party in particular need to help protect, particularly children and young people's access to. I hope that give some answer?
5-minute mark, just to let you know, and if it runs over a couple minutes, I think it's okay. 6
Alrighty.
o'clock.
So yeah, anyone else?
I think
I
there's
worked with a radio station, and we were taught never put dead air on, even if you just chit chat or say, "Dude, I'm going over here to grab the CD."
I know what you mean. There is coming up, let's see, I think there's a break. Margaret Elizabeth probably, or others of you who have been following the schedule better than I have will know, but I think there's a break, and then there's a there's the comedian fundraiser at 7 o'clock, I think.
Right.
And then after that, we're done, although there's, or maybe, I'm sorry, Margaret, I think it's an earlier than that, but I believe, yeah, so I'll let Margaret ask on mute. After that, there's a candidate cafe again from 8 to 10. I'm sorry, from 8 to 10 to midnight. I'm sorry, 10 to midnight. So Margaret, correct what I said.
It's at 5 o'clock. So you're pretty much right on. But
Okay.
I just wanted to add this about, so to kind of elaborate on what Cynthia was saying regarding athletics from a historical perspective for just a second. After the success of so this was a thing I had written a little while ago, back in early June, about this very topic. After the success of a number of black women in athletic events during 1948, according to Coming On Strong, Gender and Sexuality in 20th Century Women's Sports by Susan P. Kahn, Olympic governing bodies of the 1950s once again considered eliminating several women's track and field events because the competitors were, quote, not truly feminine. In the discussions that followed, Olympic official Norman Cox sarcastically proposed that rather than ban women's events, the IOC should create a special category for the unfairly advantaged, the, quote, hermaphrodites who regularly defeated, quote, normal women. Those were women who were skilled at, quote, childbearing with, quote again, largish breasts, wide hips, and knocked knees. This wasn't based on chromosomes or hormone levels at all. It was based on race. He was talking about black women. It was based on them not appearing feminine enough by the white standards of the time, and competitors were complaining. What do you think is going to be the result of trans athlete bans? Who do you think is going to be targeted just like before? And we see it happening right now. 2 more cis women athletes have been banned because of what they deem to be incorrect hormone levels. And of course, they're black women. Of course they are. This is going to always be this way because transphobia is rooted inherently in misogyny and racism. And it takes a special form in trans misogynoir when it's directed towards black trans women. But transphobia itself is today probably the surest and most direct on-road to fascism that we'll find in modern culture. We need to be really aware of it, and we need to understand what it really means when we see it. When you see people talking about, well, you don't look right or correct, this is you know, like, and I'm not using any hyperbole. I ask you to check your social media, but you're all aware of what the Jewish question was. That was the way the Nazis framed this whole discussion about, you know, presaging the Holocaust. The same language is being used for the transgender question. This is where we are in our country. 300 laws are pending on the books right now this year, targeting LGBTQI plus people. 25 have already been passed. This is devastating. And every single state that has passed one of those anti-queer laws has directly followed it by taking away reproductive rights for everybody in the state. That's exactly what happens over and over again because that's the goal. Remember, they talked about this stuff in the late 80s, like these religious conservatives kind of realizing that power was lost and they were going to ride the coattails of Reagan back into power. This conservative movement has been building since then. They've been talking about this very thing. And it's really important for us as leftists and as Greens to understand how this sort of language is insidious and pernicious and extraordinarily toxic and divisive to our sort of community who's trying to well, is held together by an ideological strand rather than through money or through like big, large structure, right? We all believe in the same things. We all want the same agenda. And all it takes is, you know, the one bad apple. We all know the analogy.
In terms of the Nazis, actually, I did not mention a major hero of World War II was intersex. Fiore de Henriquez, I think Fiore, was an Italian partisan, also an artist and sculptor of bronze horses. If I ever get Batman's bank account, my first thing will be to buy a Fiore de Henriquez horse statue. But yes, Fiore de Henriquez worked with the Italian partisans to fight Mussolini, also fought the troops of Hitler, helped save many minority people, including a lot of Jewish people, from being executed by the Nazis, was captured, sentenced to death, jumped out of a second-story bathroom window, and made a break to unoccupied Europe, and I think lived in America for the rest of their life, and lived into their early 80s. I think they died at like 83, 84. There's a good Wikipedia article that documents all of this. I usually bring Fiore de Henriquez up anytime people ask me, but what place do intersex people have in all these discussions? Well, let's see. We fought Hitler. We helped with all the George Washington stuff. We've done other things, including science, including art.
Can I butt in one more time? Oh, sorry.
And the Green Party should be here to affirm our right to do all that we want to do as people. So that's what I would leave people with. The Green Party affirms intersex, transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people. And I'm glad that y'all had me here to talk about this today, and I hope I made some sense talking about it.
Thank you. So we were out of time. I was just going to say, so thank you. Margaret Elizabeth, did you have anything else to say, or was the hand just still raised? I guess
No, my hand was still raised. I forgot to click the lower.
Okay, well, so we could close out. I don't know. Dawn, do you have any closing remarks or anything? Or if not, you can all just depart and see you later in the meeting.
I just thank everyone for being here and having this discussion today. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right, thank you.